The Tears of God. A novel by Dr. A. Ahmed. This book continues the story of the Arab sugar daddy and the beautiful Indian girl, and the story of the Indian child bride and the old Arab husband, and the story of the Indian Miss World and the rage of Muslims of the world, and also the story of Christina and the complete Jew. They have been written in English and translated into Arabic by the author Dr. Ahmed. This tale resonates with genuine love, strong resilience, and steadfast courage. I invite you to accompany me as I narrate the adventures of the extremely beautiful Indian girl, Aphrodite Khan, and her handsome American lover, Michael Lewinsky, in the Muslim world. Before we dive in the tapestry of the story, I would like to remind the reader this novel is narrated in 6 books. Book 1, The Arab Sugar Daddy and the Beautiful Indian Girl. Book 2, The Indian Child Bride and the Old Arab Husband. Book 3, The Indian Miss World and the Rage of Muslims of the World. Book 4, Christina and the Complete Jew. Book 5, The Tears of God, Jews, Blacks, and Muslim Women. And Book 6, The Hidden Life of the Prophet Muhammad. This is an intriguing epic story which exhibits resilience, love, and sacrifice. Book 5. Researching the social life of the Muslim woman in the Islamic world. Copyrights. All rights are reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author, except by a reviewer, who may quote brief passages from a review for printing in a public newspaper, general magazine, school journal, or university article. All characters in this novel are fictional, and any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, is merely coincidental. Chapter 8. Some forms of abuse of women in the Arab nation. After spending 2 weeks in Cairo, Malik and Malaika have been finally faced with 2 choices, either to return to their country, the USA, or move to another Muslim country. So far, they could not gather any data about the abuse of Muslim women during their visits to Saudi Arabia and Egypt. Even so, they decided to stay longer and try their luck again in another Arab country. They chose to travel to the United Arab Emirates. Out of the 7 emirates they selected Dubai. The choice of that emirate has been made based on a quick search on the internet. Their search revealed that Dubai is the first Arab country to respect human rights and grant some considerable freedom to its women. It is the only country on the entire planet Earth that has the world's only 7 stars hotel, Burj Al Arab, which is the tallest hotel tower in the Arab world. On the same day they arrived in Dubai, the American couple Malik and Malaika were advised by one of the hotel's staff to go to Dubai Square to find the subject of interest in their search. The informer told them that, over there they can find women from all levels of society and from all over the world. The guy who disclosed this important piece of information happened to be a Muslim from India. Before we find out what kind of experience the lovers have gone through in that famous Dubai Square, let us first talk a little bit about the young women who gather there. Why should young women gather every evening around an open place? To answer such an important question, we must first give a brief introduction in a single chapter. First of all, the square has 4 gathering spots or corners. Each corner has specific types of women. Let us begin with the lowest group and ascend gradually until we reach the highest group. I hope after this account, no one will accuse me of being racist or sexist or the like. If what I am going to say is not the truth, I will never dare to write one single negative statement about those young women. This true information had been disclosed to me by a first-hand female eyewitness. It is from a Sudanese woman who lived in that Arab emirate from childhood until she immigrated to a Western country. She is a victim of abuse from childhood. Her parents sold her in marriage to a grown-up man who was old enough to be her father when she was just 13 years old child. Her first husband abused her sexually and physically for 2 years, and then divorced her and married a younger girl. By then she had already given birth to a son. After that, no man came to marry her, and she remained a divorcee for a long time. In the Arab world, a female divorcee is called a second-hand wife, or an open woman, which means she is not a virgin. She is condemned to either remain single all the rest of her life or marry an old man who has other wives, and his youngest daughter is older than her. Despite that, the Sudanese divorcee decided to pursue her academic career so that she could find a better opportunity in a male-dominated society. She continued with her studies until she entered the University of Dubai. In her second year, she fell in love with her professor and eventually she married him. However, her second husband was as old as her father too. She thought that having been a highly educated man, he might give her what she had been denied from childhood, real love. Nonetheless, this second husband abused her more than her first husband. If her first husband was the incarnation of the devil, then her second husband was the Antichrist himself. As soon as she married him, the highly educated professor stopped her from completing her university studies. He began to beat and torture her too. He always spent his money on prostitutes and Ethiopian hookers at the discos and nightclubs. Therefore, every night, he deserted her on the cold bed and spent his hot nights in the arms of those foreign prostitutes. He slept with her once in 2 or 3 months. Whenever she objected to his improper behavior, he beat her. He continuously reminded her that Islam required that the wife should be satisfied with whatever amount of sex her husband could give her. Her father always stood on her husband's side and reminded her that the Quran allows the husband to beat his rebellious wife, quoting Surah Al-Nisa 4, verse 34. Whenever she went to complain to him about her husband's beating and negligence, the father told her that she would bring great shame to the family if she got divorced by her husband again. Finally, that frustrated Sudanese woman decided to trick her highly educated husband with the hope of escaping her abusive married life. Somehow, she convinced him to apply for immigration to the West. Many foreign workers in Saudi Arabia and other Arab Gulf countries like to get Western passports to enhance their statuses and be for them backup opportunities in case they lose their jobs in the future. There is no job security in Arab countries. At any moment, your Arab employer can fire you without giving any reason. Immediately after you lost your job, you would be escorted to the airport by the police authorities. If you tried to hide from the police, the consequences would be worse. Many foreign workers were chained by shackles and fetters to their seats inside the airplanes and shipped over to their countries of origin in that inhumane exodus. That abused Sudanese woman was able to convince her bad second husband to apply for immigration because he is a foreigner from Sudan. Although she was born and brought up in Dubai, she is not entitled to citizenship. If you were born and lived for 40 years in those petrodollar Arab countries, still you would live and die as a foreigner. You can be kicked out of the country at any time, and without any cause. You and your wife and children will carry status as makfalin, which means semi-slaves, and your kafil, or Arab master, has absolute rights over you and your family. At any rate, to cut a long story short, when that Sudanese woman reached Canada, she disobeyed her evil husband and refused to return with him to Dubai. Her husband knew that, if he beat her or tried to force her to return with him, he would go directly to jail. Therefore, he swallowed up his pride and returned all alone to the Arab world. He could not take his 2 children from her. And that is how she was able to extricate herself from her husband who abused her for so long. Many Muslim women are victims of this kind of abuse, and the only escape available to them is to leave their countries and move to the West. Sadly, such an excellent opportunity is not available except for a very few privileged Arab women. That Sudanese wife was able to immigrate to Canada because her husband was a university professor and a highly educated immigrant man. Otherwise, she would not be able to immigrate to any Western country if she applied alone. Many married Muslim women prefer to kill themselves than continue in those abusive marriages. The only method of suicide they know is burning their bodies. Sometimes, a Muslim woman might choose to run away from her abusive husband to escape her unbearable hellish married life. Unfortunately, when a Muslim woman chooses to run away from home, the only place that would receive her would be the street, and becoming a perpetual prostitute in another city or country. Therefore, those runaway women might fall into more abusive lives and face dire conditions than what they have already endured in their homes. After the foregoing brief introduction, let us head back to the young women and try to find out why they are gathered there. Some of them came from Muslim countries that are torn apart by civil wars such as Somalia, Syria, Iraq, Yemen, Libya, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Sudan, and Lebanon. Some of them came from poor Asian and African countries. Every evening, until late into the night, many of these young women gather around the red traffic light square, which is known in the Arabic language as Dawar Dubai. There are 4 such gatherings, with each group gathered in a particular corner of the square. The first corner is called the Ethiopian spot. Naturally, the name derives from the fact that the girls here come from Ethiopia. The services rendered by Ethiopian girls have a going rate of about 50 to 100 dirhams. At the time these accounts are recorded, $1 equals 3.67 dirhams. The second corner is called the Somali spot. Somali, Eritrean, Sudanese, Kenyan, Nigerian, and Mauritanian girls gather at this place. It is given that name because Somali girls are the majority. Some customers refer to the first and second spots as the African girls' corners, because both the Somali girls and Ethiopian damsels are from African countries, with distinctive darker skin and curly hair. Other common African attributes are a larger body build, big buttocks, and huge breasts. Even though these are common female traits, the Somali girl always commands a higher rate than the Ethiopian girl. The Somali girl charges between 150 to 200 dirhams. This discrepancy stands even though both girls are Africans, and as a general rule, most Ethiopian girls are prettier than their Somali counterparts. Well, the difference in rates has nothing to do with beauty or any external attributes. It is simply due to religious affiliation. To make this point plausible, one can call to mind the question of halal meat versus haram meat for Muslims living in Western countries. If Muslims visit or sojourn in a non-Muslim country, they are not supposed to eat food in any restaurant that belongs to an infidel or buy meat from non-Muslim stores. Their religion strictly forbids them to eat the meat of animals such as cows, sheep, goats, and chickens, if they are not ritually slaughtered. Pigs are excluded because they are unclean animals, and their pork meat is halal to infidels only. To make the meat halal for a Muslim to buy, cook, and eat, certain conditions must be met. Firstly, the killer of the animal must be a Muslim man. A Muslim woman is neither allowed to lead other Muslim men or women in prayer as an imam nor slaughter an animal. Secondly, the killer or butcher must physically face the Black House of Allah in Mecca, which also is known as the Holy Kaaba. Thirdly, he must shout, Allah Akbar. Then and only then he can cut the neck of the animal. I hope no one misunderstands me. The Muslim is supposed to shout, Allah Akbar, even if he wants to kill a human being or blow his body up in smithereens in jihad. Those of you who witnessed the cruel beheadings of Westerners who were executed by a British Muslim man, called Jihadi John, and uploaded on the internet by ISIS, should remember that the actions were carried out according to this teaching of Islam. The Arabic phrase, Allah Akbar, is usually interpreted in English as God is great or praise the Lord, but in Islam, it has a deeper meaning. It is a shout of war. Whenever a Muslim wants to slaughter someone or blow his body up in bits and pieces, you will hear this cry. Islam requires that shout of war even if the creature to be killed is a human being. Accordingly, if you happen to be in a crowd, on a bus, a train, at a beach, at a movie theater, soccer stadium, a church, a temple, a mall, or any place of social gathering and you hear someone shouting, Allah Akbar, run as fast as your legs can carry you away from that doomed place. Otherwise, your blown-up body may reach the sky in small pieces before your soul reaches heaven. Not surprisingly, Islam allows Muslims to have sexual intercourse with infidel women if they are taken as war captives, but forbids them to eat meat if the animal is killed by an infidel. According to Islam, all non-Muslims are infidels, which include Christians and Jews. All infidel women are halal for having sex with them without marrying them if they are captured in a war or bought as female slaves at the slave market. Christian girls, Jewish women, Hindu damsels, Buddhists, atheists, Satanists, feminists, and even Chinese. Their women are halal for sex, but their meat is haram to eat as food. The biography of the Prophet Muhammad tells us that he used to have sexual intercourse with a Christian Copt, called Maria, and a Jewish girl, known as Rehana. Both of them continued to follow their respective religions until he died, and he never married any one of them. I know that it is unfair to equate human beings with meat. But that is exactly how the working girls of the red traffic lights square of Dubai are valued by their Arab customers. The Ethiopian girls are subpar because they are infidel Christian women, while the Somali girls are premium because they are Muslim damsels. There is yet another reason behind that unfair evaluation of the Ethiopian girls that has nothing to do with the concept of halal meat versus haram meat, or a Muslim woman versus an infidel girl. Suffice it to say that Somali girls possess something that gave them a distinct advantage over the Ethiopian girls. Simply put, the Somali girls are genitally mutilated while the Ethiopian girls are not circumcised. Female genital mutilation, besides being a religious obligation in Islam, many Muslims believe that it endows many advantages to the girl, her family, and her husband. We will discuss the evils of female genital mutilation in later chapters, but now let us say just a few words about it. Female circumcision, or cutting off the girl's private parts, involves the removal of the ceiling of the labia majora and the labia minora together after the entire clitoris has been removed, quoting Lois 1985, page 115. When a Muslim girl undergoes the operation of female genital mutilation, she will become abnormal. Her private parts will be completely mutilated and destroyed. Her vagina will be so narrowed or so sealed that it will be reduced to a small hole, which allows her only to urinate. The woman who performs the circumcision uses a razor or her kitchen knife to cut and remove the entire clitoris. At the same time, she will slice the labia majora and labia minora, and then seal them together and leave just a small opening. She will use a small reed or feather to measure the opening that must be left open after the circumcision. The small opening may not allow the man to insert his finger. For an erected phallus of a man to go through that small opening is out of the question. Therefore, on the wedding night, the Muslim bride feels as if she has been raped by her bridegroom. Usually, most Muslim girls will be circumcised at the age of 4 or 5. Muslims believe that when the circumcised girl reaches the age of adolescence, she will not be able to indulge in sex even if she wants to do so. Any girl trying to indulge herself in sex will experience unbearable pain and feel as if she is being raped. This is the overriding reason for this procedure, to prevent her from having sex before marriage. Therefore, female genital mutilation or circumcision is meant to control the sexuality of the woman and destroy her desire for the opposite sex. In this line of thinking, there is a belief among Muslims that the uncircumcised girl can easily succumb to her sexual desire. Even if her underwear rubs her private parts, she will experience uncontrollable sexual desire, and nothing will abate her desire for masturbation or adultery. This is simply not the case for a circumcised girl, as they say. She is always in control of her sexuality, and is extremely hard to arouse her sexual desire. Due to the small hole that had been created in her pussy post-circumcision, the girl is considered always a virgin. Therefore, Muslim men believe that the circumcised girl is more sexually enjoyable than the uncircumcised girl. For that reason, the Somali Muslim girl is rated for a higher price than the uncircumcised Ethiopian Christian girl. Chapter 9. the gathering of the Arab prostitutes and foreign hookers in the Dawar Dubai at night. After we spoke briefly about the two African groups of the Somali young women and Ethiopian girls, we will speak in this chapter about the two Arab girls groups. The third group is known as the Iraqi Girls Corner. Many of the girls in this group came from Iraq. The fourth group is known as the Lebanese Girls Corner. Naturally, most of the girls in this group are from Lebanon. Due to the current civil wars in Syria, Yemen, and Libya, both these Arab groups are infiltrated by Syrian, Yemeni, and Libyan girls. Except for the Iraqi girls, the rate of each Arab girl in both these groups hovers around the 250 to 500 dirhams range. Although the Iraqi girls are also Arabs, still viewed as equivalent to the Ethiopians, commanding between 50 to 100 dirhams each. Don't ask me why the Iraqi girl is underrated. We have already seen that the Ethiopian girls are undervalued because they are Christian infidel girls and uncircumcised young women. None of these conditions afflict the Iraqi girl. Each Iraqi girl is a Muslim and also genitally mutilated when she was a child. Therefore, there is no obvious reason for such unfair treatment. Some rumors have it that the discrimination has to do with Saddam's invasion of Kuwait. When Iraqi soldiers invaded Kuwait, they indiscriminately raped all the women found. At that time, there were Arab women from all over the Arab world and very few escaped this fate. Accordingly, today every Arab man wants to take revenge on those displaced hapless Iraqi girls. The Iraqi group includes Yazidi young women. By the way, in Islam, the Yazid girls are considered infidel women, and they are not even treated as the people of the book such as Jewish and Christian girls. Maybe those rumors about the rapists of Saddam's troops are true, but still, one may ask, how can someone distinguish the Iraqi girl from the Lebanese chick, or the Jordanian damsel, or the Syrian young woman from the Egyptian or Moroccan or Palestinian girl? After all, they are all Arab girls and they look alike. Although all Arab women speak Arabic and look alike, their respective regional accents betray them. Yet, a few more facts need to be mentioned before we move to the fifth group. Due to the situation in Syria, the presence of Syrian girls at Dubai Square has increased to the point that they are the largest group in the infamous Dawar Dubai. Before the civil war in Syria, the Iraqi girls had that distinction. Iraqi and Syrian girls who escaped from their homelands did so for fear of being taken captive, raped, and sold as female slaves. Today, an Iraqi Yazidi girl sold in Mosul's slaves auction, her owner can command a female slave's price of $115. The Caliphate of ISIS forcibly genitally mutilated all their captive women. Female genital mutilation is compulsory for all human females in the Kingdom of Tartarus, which is controlled and ruled by the demons of ISIS. As we mentioned already, circumcision is obligatory for every male and female in Islam, and by cutting off the piece of skin on the glands of the penis of the male, removing the female's clitoris, and cutting and sealing together both the labia majora and labia minora, and leaving a small opening for the girl to enable her to urinate. Following the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad, ISIS made circumcision compulsory for males as well as females and severely punished those who objected or refused to comply. On the contrary, the secular military regime of President Abdul Fattah al-Sisi in Egypt prescribes a jail term of up to 20 years for any family or a doctor who ordered or practiced female genital mutilation on a female child or a grown-up Egyptian girl. Recently in Sudan, a 5-year-old girl died immediately after being subjected to the barbaric procedure of female genital mutilation. Therefore, this evil practice is barbaric, painful, harms the woman, and often can be fatal to her. The members of the Islamic Caliphate States Mujahideen come from all over the Arab and Muslim world. Hundreds of them come from the UK, France, Germany, Spain, the Netherlands, the USA, Canada, Australia, and other Western countries. Some of them immigrated to the newly founded Islamic Caliphate from Asian and African nations and South American countries. They head for Syria and Iraq for jihad and capture female slaves or obtain the shahada, or the Islamic martyrdom, resulting in the reward of 72 virgins of paradise. They practice a kind of Islamic jihad known as jihad al-Nika, or holy jihad, for capturing women and having sex with them against their wishes and without the need to marry them. This evil practice is called in the Quran halal sex. See Surah Al-Nisa 4, verse 3. After raping those captured women, their captors are allowed to sell them as female slaves in the Mosul slave market. Sometimes, those mujahideen exchange their women among themselves, like changing their clothes. Their female victims are mostly the Muslim women of their enemies, Yazidi girls, and also Iraqi and Syrian Christian young women. Before we move to the fifth group at Dubai Square, we must also talk about Asian girls. Sadly, the Asian girls are not allowed by the other four female groups to have their spot at any place at the red traffic light of the infamous Dubai Square. They are treated like outcast girls and subhuman women. Most of those Asian girls are from Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Afghanistan, Indonesia, the Philippines, Sri Lanka, and others. They are scattered everywhere like flying bats at night. Besides being discriminated against by other groups, they also are ill-treated by the Arab policemen. Now and then one of those girls will get arrested, beaten, and raped by the Arab cops. They are routinely mistreated by their customers too. Very often, they are treated as female slaves and forced to render services to their captors without pay. They have no value, and hence it is extremely hard to decide their rate. We can just say about those Asian young women, they are free of charge girls and sex for hire. I know it is an oxymoron statement, but that is their dire situation. The fifth group consists of local women, understandably called the local group. This group is invisible. Only their pimps and assistants gather there. Most of the girls in the other four groups are foreigners and unmarried young women. One peculiarity of this group is that the women are all married and have husbands. The going rate for women in this category starts at 1,000 dirhams and can climb to 5,000 dirhams. Sometimes, a woman in this category may charge up to 10,000 dirhams. One may wonder about this logic. Simply put, the answer to this question has something to do with Arab men's sexual orientation. The Arab man loves nothing more than having his female relative, female neighbor, or his friend's wife in bed. Even the Prophet Muhammad had the same problem. His biography said that he had an uncontrollable desire for the wife of his adopted son. This happened when he visited one day the house of his son, and did not find him at home. Instead, he found his daughter-in-law, who was called Zainab bint Jahash, reclining on her bed while she was semi-nude. He became sexually aroused and desired her, and murmured some words which were interpreted by Allah that the Prophet wanted her on his bed, but in a halal way. When her husband returned home, his wife told him about the visit of his father, and how he reacted when he saw her semi-stark naked. Then the son went to his father and said to him, "If you like my wife, I will divorce her so that you can have her in a halal marriage." The Prophet said to him, "Keep your wife to yourself and fear Allah." At once, Allah revealed a verse in the Holy Quran and rebuked the Prophet for fearing people and hiding in his heart what he desired. Surah Al-Ahzab 33, verse 37. To the effect that the Prophet compelled his son to divorce his wife, and therefore he married her and took her to his bed and raped her, or rather sexually fucked her on the halal way. That is why the women of this invisible local group are so highly priced and prized, because every Arab man wants to have sex on his bed with the daughter of his neighbor or the wife of his best friend. Sometimes, he may desire even the wife of his colleague or boss. Whenever such a desire hits him, he will bribe one of the pimps and ask him to get her for him by hook or crook. The pimp will not leave a stone unturned to satisfy that urgent sexual urge. Most of those married women are already suffering from sexual frustration. They are victims of polygamous marriages, with husbands habitually getting younger and prettier girls and marrying them. As soon as the polygamist husband finds a young girl to marry, he will hardly sleep with his other wives. Therefore, those deserted wives look for sexual satisfaction from their husbands' car drivers or somewhere else. Marital infidelity for them becomes a source of pleasure and getting some extra cash. Practicing premarital sex for an unmarried local girl can lead to honor killing. Also, the girl will be killed if she is caught having an affair with a man before marriage. If she indulged in a sexual relationship before marriage and her family did not know about it, her husband would find out that she wasn't a virgin on their first wedding night, and the consequences will be dire for her and her parents. However, the married Arab woman will tell you since she is already opened, she does not fear being caught and slain in an honor killing. In other words, since she is already having an open pussy, her husband will not know who is fucking her besides him. In that society, the honor of the family is located between the legs of the woman. Some of the young women are displaced from their homes and forced to flee due to wars in their countries, Iraq, Syria, Libya, Yemen, Sudan, and Somalia. Some left, heading for rich petrodollar countries. Asian young women and African girls are forced by their abject poverty to leave their poor countries and come to rich Arab countries on maidservant visas. The foreign maidservants begin to experience abuse at the point of arrival. As soon as such a foreign maidservant arrives in the house of her employer, she will be openly sexually harassed by the male members of that household. The father, his grown-up sons, and any other male relatives feel it is their right to have sexual intercourse with their maidservant whether she consents or not. The maidservant works from sunrise to sunset as a slave, and from evening until dawn, she will be forced to sleep with whoever male wants her on his bed. Many prominent religious leaders in Saudi Arabia and other Arab countries issued fatwas that justified the treatment of the foreign maidservants as right-hand possessed, which means female slaves. According to those fatwas, Arab employers can have sex with their maidservants against their wishes, and with full knowledge of their wives and daughters. Therefore, raping a maidservant is not considered a crime, but a religious right to her male employer. In addition, their employers are known as kafils, which means masters or owners, and they are called makfulat, female slaves or the right-hand possessed foreign young women. We can recall to the mind the way Sheikh Faiz bin Ahmed mistreated his Indian maidservant, Rehana Khan. And also he married, raped, and imprisoned her 7-year-old daughter Ifat Khan. By law, the Arab owners can kick their foreign maidservants out of the country any time they want. Sometimes, the Arab employer changed his maidservants 4 to 5 times a year. The first time he gets his sex maidservant from India, the next sex female doll from Pakistan, his third sex girl from the Philippines, the fourth maidservant from Indonesia, and his fifth female sex slave from Sri Lanka. He changes his maidservants like changing his underwear. Those Arab owners can also beat their maidservants or rape them. If an employer kills his maidservant, he can get away with it. After all, Islam forbids capital punishment for any Muslim who kills a non-Muslim, who is known in Islam as an unclean infidel. The reverse is not true. Chapter 10. The halal hookers and male prostitutes in Dawar Dubai at night. There is one last group we need to say a few words about it. It does not meet the definition of a group as the above-mentioned other 5 groups do. They are neither female hookers nor male prostitutes. There are no bisexual person prostitutes either in this group. If they are neither human males nor their female counterparts nor even bisexual beings, then what types of creatures are they? They are not even the Hur al-Ain, the 72 virgins of paradise, which are mentioned in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad. Hur al-Ain or virgins of paradise are not earthy human beings, but sublime female creatures created by Allah, especially for the sexual enjoyment of Muslim men in paradise. This 6th group consists of earthly human beings like you and me. They, however, do not consider themselves like other girls. They insist that they are not prostitutes or street hookers, although they perform the very same services. They demand money for their services but call them wages just like female workers. They demand wages from their customers by the hour. Before she goes with her customer, the girl in this category will ask him how long he wants her under his service. Simply put, the girls of this group do not like to be called prostitutes because Islam does not define them as such. Therefore, by order of the Sharia law, anyone who calls them prostitutes will be prosecuted. You have not even any legal ground to name them religious hookers. The only difference from other girls, the girl in this group will ask her customer to marry her before she goes with him. The marriage business for her is imperative. If the customer refuses to marry her, she will never allow him to touch her body no matter how much amount of money he may propose to pay her. She will tell him that she is a Muslim girl, and her religion will not permit her to have sexual intercourse with a man except in the halal way, legal sex. If he agrees to marry her, then she will go with him to his bed in his house, in the open desert on the back of his camel, and even in his car, if he wants backseat sex. She will agree to pornographic sex through her mouth or masturbation with her hands, but even that also must be performed under the conditions and restrictions of muta marriage and halal sex. If her customer consents to this halal sex, then and only then she will sleep with him. Someone must say wow. We may all of us can say what a good Muslim girl she is. Most of the girls who practice this kind of service are from Iraq, Iran, Syria, Lebanon, and the United Arab Emirates. They are all Muslim girls. If they are Muslim young women like other Muslim girls, why do they charge wages and demand a marriage contract before indulging themselves in this kind of practice? They are Shiite Muslim girls, and their counterparts are prostitutes from Sunni Islam. They also are prostitutes, but the kind of prostitution they practice is considered halal in Islam because it is done under the cover of marriage. It is called muta marriage, which means halal enjoyment sex. Muta marriage is a temporary lawful relationship between a man and a woman. The relationship can last for 1 hour, 2 hours, or 3 hours. The muta marriage does not require a judge or witnesses. The man has to say to the girl, "I marry you myself," and she also has to say to him, "I marry you myself." Then he must pay her wages as her dowry, the bride's price. As soon as their private marriage is consummated through sexual intercourse, the man has no further legal right over the enjoyment wife. She can go immediately and contract another man in yet another similar temporary enjoyment marriage. In one single night, she can marry more than 10 men, and they can all of them fucked her and her pussy in halal multiple enjoyment marriages. Young Iraqi Shiite girls are being sold for sex in temporary enjoyment marriages that can last only as little as an hour, a BBC documentary revealed on October 4, 2019. Such marriage is allowed by the Quran in Surah Al-Nisa 4, verse 24. Little girls are sold for sex in temporary, pleasure marriages that can last as little as an hour. An Iraqi cleric says, no problem at all to wed a 9-year-old girl under Islamic law. So, according to Sharia, there is no problem to wed an underage girl, said one cleric. Of course not, they are following Muhammad, the ideal example, whose favorite wife Aisha was 6 years old when he married her, and 9 when he consummated the marriage. This kind of enjoyment marriage differs from ordinary Islamic marriage because it doesn't aim at a continuous married life, but sexual enjoyment in a lawful way. It had been permitted and practiced by the Prophet Muhammad, but abolished after his death by his second caliph, Omar ibn al-Khattab. The Shiite Muslims argued that the Caliph Umar had no legal ground to abolish it because it is permitted by the Holy Quran in Surah Al-Nisa 4, verse 24. According to Islamic Sharia, no one has the right to abolish or abrogate a verse from the Holy Quran after the death of the Prophet Muhammad. Notwithstanding, the muta marriage is unlawful in Sunni Islam, but practiced by the Shiite Muslims until today. In Iran, it is estimated that over 70% of muta wives become prostitutes, quoting Woodsmall 1983, page 119. Nonetheless, the girls of this sixth group will not agree to be identified as prostitutes. We cannot call them the Temple Holy Prostitutes, because they do not do their mutta marriages at the Muslims' forbidden house of Allah at Mecca, or inside the Black Kaaba, nor do they practice them in mosques. Any sexual relationship between a man and woman outside the marriage bond is forbidden in Islam except with female slaves, who are called the man's right-hand possession sex slaves, or female war captives. I guess the proper name for the girls in this category is holy hookers or halal prostitutes. Although mutta marriages are forbidden in Sunni Islam, it has its equivalent in the so-called al-zawaj al-urfi, traditional marriage. It is a marriage between a boy and a girl without the knowledge of their families. It also does not need a judge or marriage contract. It requires the witness of only one person. Usually, schoolboys and girls or college students use one of their friends or girlfriends as a witness. In Sudan, every year hundreds of Muslim girls are impregnated through the so-called al-zawaj al-urfi. Babies born out of this kind of secret relationship are not accepted by the girl's parents and are considered bastards in society. Therefore, after delivering their babies, they are thrown in garbage containers to be eaten up by stray dogs, and they die as outcasts. Before we conclude these lengthy accounts, and before we mention what happened to the American couple Malik and Malaika on their visit to Dubai Square, we need to speak briefly about another group of visitors. This group cannot be given the same status as the other 6 groups because it does not consist of women. It is a group of young Arab boys who render the same service. We cannot call them gays because gay people in the West don't charge money for making love with their male lovers. They are not lesbians either because they are not females. Even though those male prostitutes have no specific spot at the red traffic light of Dubai Square, they are scattered everywhere like the Asian outcast girls. This group is called the 5th column of prostitutes. Whatever that phrase may mean in English is not a big issue. The big issue is that those Arab boys are treated as women and get fucked and paid money for their services by their male customers. They do not get hired, sexually fucked, and then paid by sexually frustrated Arab married women. Such kinds of married women, as we mentioned above, get free sexual satisfaction from their husbands, Pakistani or Indian car drivers. In the Arab world, the male prostitute talks like a girl, walks like a lady, his body like a human female, takes care of his body like a woman, does makeup like a damsel, wears female perfumes, and applies lipstick. The only thing that distinguishes him from the woman, he puts on male clothes. We cannot say the biological difference is a significant factor because most of the female prostitutes will agree to anal sex with their customers and charge extra money. Despite that, the male prostitute is highly prized and highly desired by Arab men. His price is higher than all the 5 female groups but lower than the 5th invisible group of those married local Arab women. I do not understand the obsession of Arab men with male prostitutes. Maybe homosexuality and homoeroticism are on the rise in the Middle East because of the social segregation of males and females and the restrictions placed on women. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has the highest number, followed by the Gulf countries. According to one British magazine, 23% of Saudis are gays and lesbians. In a recent interview, a female schoolteacher in Riyadh City said that 90% of her female students admitted that they had sex with their female classmates in school or girlfriends at their houses. In Saudi Arabia, if a female prostitute is caught, she will be stoned to death, but if a male prostitute is arrested, he will not be punished. There is no punishment in the Sharia for gay people who practice sodomy and men among prostitutes. Most of the male prostitutes were not born gays or made themselves that way but were forced to be so when they were small children at homes or schools. The majority of them are victims of child abuse and child rape by their male relatives, neighbors, school teachers, or older schoolmates. It is quite customary practice in Muslim countries, where there is no coeducation in schools, that small children of 7 to 10 years old are forcibly sodomized by their male teachers and bigger classmates. Usually, small children were subjected to rape at that early age. It is generally considered that male children have soft and delicate bodies like women. On their first visit to Dubai Red Traffic Light Square, the American couple understood that Dubai was not the right place to find data about the abuse of women in the Muslim world. They decided not to waste another day in that emirate. Furthermore, their visit to that infamous square exposed Malaika to even more sexual harassment than she had experienced during her 5 days of the Hajj rituals in Makkah City. She has been sexually harassed and physically contacted by the lustful Arab men who came to feast on those young foreign women who gathered there to sell their bodies. Some Arab men and pimps followed the American couple until their hotel. Malaika felt as if she was a stray fish chased by deadly sharks. All the time, she has been accompanied by her husband, but that has not deterred the mob of her pursuers. The obvious fact she is a married woman made them desire her more and strive hard to get her. Malik threatened to call the cops on them, but that also did not cause them to waver. They continued to follow her like savage wolves chasing one of the deer in a jungle. They kept on whistling, waving their hands, showing their thousands of dollars, and shouting words in Arabic like a beautiful and sexy Indian hooker walking with a white foreign gay person who loves to practice sodomy with men. Their words sounded gibberish to the American couple, as if coming from people possessed with demons of lust. Malik could not believe that intelligent human beings living with him on the same planet Earth could behave in such a barbaric manner. They have been so much possessed by their animalistic desires that their minds cease functioning. The American husband has fully expected the mob surrounding his Indian wife to rape her in broad daylight, in front of everyone around when they reached the hotel. He silently steeled his will to stop this and prayed to God to help him in his fight against those demon-possessed Arabs. Therefore, the braveheart American husband has determined those Arab human beasts could rape his beautiful Indian wife only after killing him first, and then jump over his dead body and reach her. Those Arab men have no respect for the sanctity of marriage nor believe in the concept of human rights or women's rights. For them, the woman is meat, and when she exposes her face or parts of her hands and legs, then she becomes a sex female available for haunting for every man walking on the streets. The concept of sex as a mutual relation between two persons who love each other does not exist in their vocabulary. Moreover, they have an erroneous understanding of the Western woman that she is always free and ready for every male who wants her on his bed. Sex in Islam is called wat, which means falling, jumping, or climbing on the body of the woman. Marriage is called in the Quran, nikah, which means sexual intercourse. Muslim men and women are both victims of the perverse teachings of Islam about sex and marriage. These distorted teachings turned women into sexual female prey, and men into ferocious hunters. Therefore, the Muslim men see in the women nothing except fresh meat, which Allah has granted them divine rights to haunt and devour them. Each one of those Muslim men is permitted for wives by way of polygamous marriages, female slave acquisition, war female captives, or the so-called stray women walking on the streets without men to protect them. In that way, once he tires of his catch, he can look for more fresh meat. The former king of Saudi Arabia bragged in one foreign magazine that he had sex with 200 women, but never had more than 4 wives at a time. The uncle of the emir, or ruler, of Kuwait married 99 women. One day, he visited a girls' school and saw a beautiful 15-year-old girl. Then he asked his assistant to betroth that beautiful teenage girl for him, but he was rebuked and corrected by his assistant because the girl was one of his many daughters. Islam divides human beings into hunters and the hunted like wolves and sheep. It deprives a woman of her rights as a human being and imposes female genital mutilation, child marriage, polygamy, wife-beating, and body coverings on her. In many Muslim societies, women are not allowed to go to schools, work, drive cars, go to gyms, practice any kind of sports, go to beaches or swimming pools, or public parks, or participate in any kind of public entertainment. They are locked behind iron doors like dangerous female prisoners or wild creatures. Therefore, Islam is the biggest curse of hell that fell on the women. Chapter 11. Meeting the Muslim terrorists of Hezbollah and some immoral Christians of Lebanon. The American husband Malik considered it a miracle when God answered his prayer and saved his beloved Indian wife Malika from being raped by the lustful Arabs who chased them like hungry wolves from Dawar, Dubai to their hotel. The following day, the American couple checked out of their hotel and headed directly to the international airport. They decided not to spend any more time in the Emirates. They reached the Dubai International Airport without any travel plans. They came across a Lebanese Christian man who advised them to visit his country. Like the Egyptian Muslim imam in the States, the Lebanese Christian man sang praises of his country's beauty and his people's fairness, which convinced the American couple to travel to Beirut. Through him, they learned that Lebanon is the only Arab country with a large population of Christians. He said the Lebanese Christians in Lebanon are more in number than the Coptic Christians in Egypt. On his word, Malik and Malika flew directly from the Emirate of Dubai to the state of Lebanon. On their arrival at Beirut Rafik Hariri International Airport, the American couple learned that the city of Beirut is divided into two sections, West Beirut and East Beirut. Between the two sections is a green line of demarcation created during the Lebanese Civil War of 1975 to 1990. It separated the mainly Muslim factions in West Beirut from the Christian Lebanese front in East Beirut. Besides that, there is the city of Jaouni, which is located 16 kilometers away from Beirut. Jaouni is known for its wild nightlife and half-naked young women dancing all night long with their men, and alcohol and drugs sold like groceries in the stores. The couple chose to stay in the Muslim section. They already learned their lesson from their experience in Dubai. Therefore, Malika covered her entire body from head to toe with the black burqa. She even hid her face with an Islamic niqab. This time, instead of staying in a hotel, the American couple rented an apartment in the Hamra area. Shiite Muslims dominate the place where they came to stay. Most of them are staunch followers and supporters of Hezbollah. The taxi driver who brought them from the international airport advised them to stay in that area. Moreover, he is the go-between who helped them to get the apartment. He also is a follower of that Lebanese terrorist group. Malik and Malika, in a hurry, introduced themselves to the taxi driver and the owner of their apartment. They are new converts to Islam. In haste, they disclosed that they were Americans. Muslims of the Middle East hate Americans more than they hate Satan and all his demons. Arab Muslims and Arab Christians alike share the same hatred towards Americans and Jews. Even if an American embraced Islam, it does not allow him to escape such bitter hatred. All their misfortunes in life are blamed on America and Israel. Hezbollah's terrorists and supporters never trust a white man or a white woman even if they get married to them. All whites are treated with suspicion and considered either spying for Israel or agents of the West. Whenever they come across white people who converted to Islam, they will be put to the test. They are expected to prove their loyalty to their new faith. They will tell them that as Muslims they have to join the Islamic jihad against the Jewish pigs of Israel and the Christian monkeys of the Western countries. They follow the words of their holy Quran and the hadiths of their infallible Prophet Muhammad, calling the Jews and Christians brothers of apes and pigs. The Quran orders Muslims never to take the Jews and Christians as their friends or trust them. It also tells them that those brothers of apes and pigs will not love them and be pleased by them until they follow their religions. Moreover, the Muslims' holy book says the Jews are an accursed race and Christians are deluded people. As soon as the information about the American couple reached the ears of top leaders of Hezbollah, they decided to smuggle Malik and Malika across the border of Lebanese-Israeli and place them in the hands of the Palestinian terrorist group Hamas. The leaders expected that the American Muslim couple would not accept their decision and hence planned to kidnap them and then send them to South Lebanon where they have their strongholds. At once, a date for such a secret kidnapping operation has been scheduled and plans are made. Fortunately, on the same day, the Hezbollah terrorists decided to carry out their evil scheme of kidnapping the two Americans. Someone came unexpectedly and saved the unaware American couple. The person who saved the lives of Malik and Malaika happened to be a Lebanese Christian. He is a senior police officer in the Department of the Anti-Terrorist Police Force in Beirut. His team intercepted a phone conversation between a terrorist leader inside a city and another one in Beirut City. It revealed that there was a secret plot to kidnap two Americans living in an apartment at Hamra Street and take them to South Lebanon. Immediately, the Christian senior police officer came with his team of fully armed policemen, informed the American couple about the plot, and moved them out of that Muslim-dominated area. Following their second miraculous rescue, Malik and Malaika moved from western Beirut to eastern Beirut and stayed in a Christian house in a civilized area called Al-Mansouriya. Most of the people in that locality are Christians. Moving from West Beirut to East Beirut is like traveling from a Muslim country in the Middle East to a Western country in Europe, or flying directly from Mogadishu to Los Angeles or from Tora Bora to London. You can see no longer women clad in burqas and walking on the streets like black ghosts accompanied by somber-faced bearded men. Now you can see Arab Christian girls dressed up in jeans t-shirts and short clothes walking hand in hand with their boyfriends. You also can see young women in bikinis and lying semi-nude at the beaches of the Mediterranean Sea. Men and women mixed freely without any restrictions. They can dance together in discotheques and nightclubs. There are rumors that, in some hotels in East Beirut and Jaouni City, there are stripper dancing halls, and on certain beaches, women walk freely in the nude, and sometimes you can see even topless girls without their bras covering their sexy boobs. Their big backsides are fully visible, as if they have no bikinis. They look like those sexy nude Brazilian girls walking on the sands of Copacabana Beach. The Christian home, which Malik and Malaika came to live in as paying guests, belonged to a Maronite Syriac Christian family. The Maronite family has two teenage girls and their parents. The father spends most of his time at home either watching TV or reading local newspapers. He is a jobless and heavy drunkard. Each girl has a boyfriend who regularly picks her up in his car and takes her wherever he wants to go. None of the two teenage girls has ever informed her parents where she is going or what time she will be expected back home. Even their mother has her boyfriend who visits her often and takes her out with him. Her boyfriend is twice more than her age and looks like her father rather than her lover. His dress and name show that he is a Muslim. His name is Muhammad, but his Christian girlfriend calls him Hamoudi and Hamada. Although his wife is having an open love affair with another man, this improper relationship seems not to bother her Christian husband at all. He is living on the income of his wife, who said she is working in a beauty parlor. He also knows that his wife is having an affair with a very wealthy Muslim man, which explains her extravagant lifestyle. It is she who supplies his alcoholic drinks and cigarettes for his smoke. Every evening, the Muslim man comes in his expensive car, beeps his horn for his girlfriend, and waits until she comes and sits beside him in the passenger seat. The car then drives away. Every day, her husband hears the horn, sees the car and its owner, and watches his wife dressing up smartly after she has already applied all kinds of makeup, lipstick, and expensive perfume. He never once asked her where she was going and whom she was going with, or even what time would she be expected home. He always remains deaf and dumb to his wife and two daughters' improper behaviors. Malik and Malaika are astonished by the incredulous immoral behaviors of the members of this Lebanese Christian family. They understood that those Arab Christians are misusing the freedom they have in their religion. It did not take long for the American couple to understand that those people were not true Christians. They are professing to be Christians, but their manners expose them. They were only born in a society that considered Christianity to be something that people could inherit from their parents and pass on from one generation to the next generation through blood. Although they called themselves Christians, they still have no relationship with Christ and do not know the Holy Scriptures. Their behaviors are not based on the moral teachings of the Holy Bible, which forbids adulterous relations such as premarital sex and extramarital sex, but are drawn from their Lebanese culture. When they arrived at their house, Malik and Malaika introduced themselves to the members of that Maronite family as Christians. Malaika had already stripped herself of that coffin-like and demeaning burqa. After she moved from Hamra Street to Al-Mansuriya, she did not see any need to dress up in her Islamic cocoon or behave as a Muslim woman anymore. Immediately, she switched back to her Western clothes. At first, the couple decided to stay for an abbreviated time in the house of the Christian family and then move to another Muslim country. However, the improper behaviors of these nominal Christians led Malik to change his mind. He convinced his wife of his intention. He decided to preach the glorious gospel of Jesus Christ and his Sermon on the Mount to those Arab Christian people who are only Christians in the name. Chapter 12. A visit to the Church of Black Slaves in Beirut. On their first Sunday in Lebanon, the American couple visited a church they chose randomly from the phone book. Being a Lebanese church, its service is in Arabic and there are two interpreters, a pretty Lebanese girl translating in French and another Arab guy translating in English. This is because 1/3 of its members are white people from France, Quebec province in Canada, America, and other European countries. Most of them are of Western descent and married to Lebanese. Lebanese Christians love marrying white Westerners. There is no specific explanation for this phenomenon except that some citizens of that country simply prefer white skin, blonde hair, and green eyes. Lebanon is called by some the Switzerland of the East, and it is capital Beirut, Paris of the Orient. Some say Lebanon and its capital city had been given those names because of the beauty of nature and mountains and cedar trees, and some said because the majority of its inhabitants are Christians. Many Lebanese believe that those names were of the past. During and after the Civil War, many Christians left the country and moved to the West. Muslims' number is increasing by the day, while Christians are decreasing rapidly. Today, there are two officially recognized armies in the country, Hezbollah's army and the Lebanese government's army, with the former being more powerful than the latter. Without a strong police presence in the country, Hezbollah's terrorists are free for everybody and act as policemen as well as soldiers. Accordingly, the proper name for Lebanon today must be named Iran of Arabia, and Beirut should be called Tehran of Phoenicia. When the American couple entered the church, they did not feel comfortable. The church resembles any one of the white churches in South Africa during the apartheid. Only whites and Lebanese Christians can feel welcome. Malaika, being of Indian origin, is thought to be a maidservant from Sri Lanka. Therefore, the pastor of the church approached Malik and asked him if Malaika was indeed his Asian domestic maidservant girl, and why he came with her instead of his white wife. Before Malik could explain the misunderstanding, the pastor's wife directly asked Malaika why she came there. Before she could answer her, she advised her instead she should have gone to the Burj Hamad church where there is a special service for Sri Lanka and African maidservants at Kanasat al-Abid. The pastor translated the words Kanasat al-Abid to the couple before they asked him to do so, the Beirut Church for Slaves. The American couple was extremely shocked by the kind of reception extended to them in the house of God. They became more perplexed when they heard that there was a special Sunday service for the slaves somewhere in Beirut. Malaika is doubly flustered for her being taken as a maidservant by the pastor of the church, and the female slave of the white man Malik who dared to bring her along to a Christian church meant for free people by the pastor's wife. The American husband is more astonished than his Indian wife, especially when he hears that there is in the 21st century a church for slaves in Lebanon. He decided to go and see with his own eyes what kind of a church it is. Before we go with the American couple to that particular church of the slaves, let's say a few words about the disgusting racial discrimination in Lebanon. Suffice it to mention a few examples. A wealthy Sudanese business tycoon came for a short visit to Beirut and stayed in a five-star hotel. When he went to enjoy himself in the hotel swimming pool, all the Arab guests and their children left the pool, headed to the hotel manager, and demanded the hotel kick the black men out of the water or all of them would vacate their rooms and move to another hotel. The hotel manager was a pragmatic man, and therefore he kicked the black men out through the cops. Of course, at first, the Sudanese gentleman refused to comply and began to quote some articles from the Charter of Human Rights. He said he is human and must be treated equally to others. The manager told him yes, all people are equal, but in Lebanon, some people believe they are more equal than African foreigners. When the wealthy business tycoon refused to come out of the pool, the hotel manager accused him of a false offense. He told him that some of the hotel's female guests complained that he teased them when they were swimming in their bikinis in the water. Then the manager called the cops and sent the stubborn Sudanese gentleman to jail. A couple of weeks later, the suspect was tried, convicted, fined $10,000, his name blacklisted, and kicked out of the country. Likewise, a Lebanese wife forced her husband to fire his female secretary because she was a black girl. Whenever a black man enters the beach, all the bikini-clad sexy Lebanese girls and their boyfriends will move a couple of kilometers away from him. They believe he either makes the water black by his skin color or spreads a dangerous contagious disease. Sometimes, when a black person steps inside a beach, all Lebanese families with their children flee out of the water, as if they have seen a deadly shark or a dangerous crocodile entering the water. A Sudanese famous poet visited Lebanon and drafted the saddest poem ever written in Arabic. It became a popular song in Sudan by the greatest singer, Al-Tayyab Abdullah. The sad song is about a Lebanese girl at the Beirut International Airport who got frightened and angry when she saw the black Sudanese poet, and that he could speak Arabic. The beginning poetical verses of the sad song go like this.
Oh, girl, what a country this is! Every heart grows cold in love. I was not created in a homeland wherein its protection passion is oppressed. So why do I see you rebelling? And the sign of the cause is forced. The valuable fur is scattered like pain that makes the body miserable. Now the darkness is covering me, I don't have a hand in it, oh girl. Though I am a stranger, you should know that I have a spacious home and a country. What sin did I commit and break out a revolution from you that was betrayed by the skin? Is this the ending troubling? Is this why the eyes are burning? Why does this cross within your breasts tremble? My body is like theirs, I have past, present, and tomorrow. Farewell, farewell, my killer. Behold, I depart from your protection. My steps will be far from a country where the stone of Eve's heart is solid. And I will cover the wounds in my liver, their unnumbered ones.
At any rate, the American couple immediately left, feeling that even the Lord Jesus Christ would feel unwelcome in that disgusting racist congregation. The following Sunday, they stopped a taxi and asked the driver whether he knew the Knesset Al-Abid in the Burj Hamad area. The driver told them that everyone in Beirut knows the Knesset Al-Abid, or the church for black slaves. Before we enter with Malik and Malika that church, let us find out what kind of people live in that area. Burj Hamad was founded by survivors of the Armenian genocide of 1915, who fled the death camps of the Muslim Turks. When the sick and exhausted Armenians who had survived the death marches in Deir ez-Zor, today Syria, arrived in Beirut after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, they were given the right to construct shacks on the eastern banks of the Beirut River. At that time, it was an expanse of big swamps and dirty marshes. The Armenian genocide, also called the Armenian massacres, was a systematic and premeditated extermination of 1.5 million Armenians by the Ottoman Empire during and after World War I. They were killed for no reason except that they were Christians, and their murderers were Muslims. One of the commanders of the Turkish terrorist Mujahideen fighters, Cevadet Bey, said, "I shall kill every Christian man, woman, and pointing to his knee, every child, up to here," citing Morgenthau, Henry 1918, Ambassador Morgenthau's story, Garden City, New York Doubleday. The systematic annihilation also targeted other Christian communities, such as Assyrians and Greek Christians. Millions of the forced deportees were driven to the Syrian desert after having been deprived of water and food and subjected to periodic rape and robbery by the locals and Ottoman soldiers. The Armenian mass genocide is known as the first Holocaust in the world. As the Lebanese pastor's wife had announced, the church is known to all as Kanasat al-Abid, which literally means the church for black slaves. To speak the truth and be fair to the Arab Christians of Lebanon, the church was not so named because its members are slaves or owned by some people. The name was invented by the Arab Lebanese because all the members of that church are black people or people of dark skin who originally came from either Africa or Asia. Africans and people of dark skin are called by the Lebanese people Abid, which means slaves. This naming is not only confined to Lebanon, but is used by all Arab countries. If you are an African American and visited Lebanon, people will call you Abid on your face. Whether you like it or not, that is the way those Arab people see you. Even if you went to Harvard University and became the President of the United States of America, you will be nothing to them, but merely a black slave called Abed. These negative values towards blacks are shared by all Arabs, Muslims as well as Christians. Wherever they live or wherever they go in the world, they will always carry these discriminative and racist behaviors and negative values with them. Accordingly, if you are a black person or have dark skin, you will not be welcomed in many Lebanese churches, and most probably if you show up unexpectedly or are not invited to any church, you will be advised by the pastor or his wife to leave and go and join the church that suits you, which is called the Kanasat al-Abid, the church for black slaves at the Burj Hamad area. They do not hide it or feel bad about it, but they will say to your face that you are black and therefore you are a slave. The pastor of the so-called Kanasat al-Abid is a Nigerian man. Its congregation members are a mixture of Nigerians, Kenyans, Sudanese, Ethiopians, and maidservants from Sri Lanka. There are other Africans from Liberia, Ghana, Sierra Leone, Ivory Coast, and Madagascar, but they are the minority. There is also a sprinkling of Asians from Pakistan, India, Indonesia, and the Philippines. There are over 400 regular members. If you arrive late, you may not find a seat. Latecomers will be obliged to stand on their feet during the entire 2-hour Sunday service. Before the 2-hour service, there is at least an hour of sharing testimony. There is nothing more of significance worth mentioning about the so-called Church of the Slaves except that its members are discriminated against by the Lebanese Christians and forced to create their own church. By the way, the members of that church do not call their church Kanasat al-Abid, but the name was bestowed upon them by their racist fellow Christians of Beirut. It is proudly called by its members the International Church of God. There is nothing extraordinary the American couple has found when they visited the International Church of God except that it is one of those modern Pentecostal churches which focused its teachings on the so-called prosperity gospel. No one of its members seemed to be rich or prospering in his or her life slightly. Every foreign member of that church, including its pastor and elders, is a victim of Arab exploitation, low salaries, high living expenses, lack of access to basic facilities, and lack of freedom to move around. Sometimes their external perils can lead to isolation, depression, despair, and eventually suicide. They always get exploited by the local Lebanese policemen and military soldiers and robbed of their savings by Hezbollah's terrorists. Female migrant workers are victims of sexual harassment by their employers and very often get arrested and raped by wicked Arab police officers and cruel Lebanese military soldiers. Most of the migrant workers entered illegally in the country, and hence they have no official permits to work or to stay in Lebanon, making them vulnerable targets to the police and soldiers. In Lebanon, there is no difference between the police force and the military army. Everyone in government uniform can detain you and do whatever he wants to do with you if you happen to be an illegal alien. The fighters of the so-called Hezbollah, resistance army, against the Zionist country, the State of Israel, are terrorizing all people in Lebanon. If you visit Beirut, you will see Hezbollah's terrorists carrying their machine guns and standing in every street and corner and demanding donations for their resistance army. Imagine yourself has been confronted by someone as big as the gorilla, wearing on his face a 1-meter-long beard, with an AK-47 Kalashnikov in his right hand and a bag in his left hand. He is demanding donations for the resistance army. Of course, the only way to appease such a terrible terrorist is to hand over to him whatever money you have in your wallet or handbag. Chapter 13. The child abuse and rape of the underage girls in Lebanon. After attending the Sunday service in the International Church of God, the American couple decided to have some entertainment to help them to dilute the sad experiences the two Christian churches they have visited have created in their hearts. Therefore, they went to downtown Beirut to watch a movie. They asked someone to direct them to the best cinema hall in town. They explained to that person they were looking for a movie theater that shows foreign movies in English. The person claimed to have understood what the American couple said in English, and hence showed them where they could find what they were looking for. When they reached the cinema, they selected the hall based on the poster which displayed an English movie. They do not want to run into a hall that features movies in Arabic. Their knowledge of the Arabic language so far is zero. Whenever they heard people talking in Arabic, they sounded to them as if those people were speaking gibberish. In the church that they had just visited, everyone spoke in that gibberish language for an hour, but they claimed that they were speaking a heavenly language. The pastor said that only God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit can understand the language he and his congregation are speaking in mystery. Therefore, they are speaking in the Spirit to God, and hence only the Holy Trinity can understand and interpret what they are speaking in tongues. When they entered the hall, the American husband Malik quickly noticed that there was not a single woman in the audience except his Indian wife, Malika Khan. None of the hundreds of viewers has brought with him his girlfriend, wife, or daughter. That knowledge did not so much bother the American husband when he remembered that the theater is located near the Riyadh Al Sol Square, where the green line of demarcation separates East Beirut from West Beirut. He thought that most of the people in the cinema hall were from Muslim areas. He knows Muslims like to confine their females inside their houses like wild beasts or female prisoners. That day, the movie hall is so crowded because it is a holiday. Unlike other Middle Eastern countries, Lebanon's official weekend, when government offices and schools close, is Sunday, not Friday. Everyone, in the hall, is smoking freely, which turns it into a literal smokehouse. They have even seen some guys bring their alcohol bottles and drinks, as if they were in a brothel and tavern house. Another thing that troubled the couple is that every pair of eyes is constantly staring at the only female inside the hall. The American husband has tried to dispel the fear from his heart. He understood it was natural that the marvelous beauty of his beloved Indian wife, who is a former Miss World, and her sexy body attracted the curiosity of those Arab men. He also knows those Muslim men, when they see a woman exposing her face, hands, and shoulders, they become crazy. On that Sunday, Malika happened to be dressed up in tight jeans and a sleeveless shirt with high heels shoes. Her jeans made her backside appear bigger, and her shirt exposed half of her breasts. She looks lovely and sexy. The way those Arabs kept staring at her with lustful eyes while whispering amongst themselves led her to feel as if she was the one out of place and sitting bare naked in a public place. The improper behaviors of those lustful men caused Malik's heart to be gripped with fear. He recollected their bitter experience at the infamous Dawar Dubai with those lustful men who kept chasing them until their hotel. He worried that if some of the men decided to carry out the content of their hearts, he will not be able to prevail against their substantial number, and hence unable to prevent them from raping his wife. The great incredulous shock for the couple is yet to come. The Braveheart American husband Malik has prepared himself for the worst to happen to them in that crowded theater hall, but his mind might have never conceived or remotely thought of what his beloved wife and himself are going to experience soon in that hall. He thought some of those lustful Arab men may suddenly attack and rape his beloved wife. He understood he would not be able to fight and prevail against such a large number of those sexually perverted guys. He also heard that some Arab men are notoriously gay people and love to practice sodomy with boys, so therefore some of them may try to rape him too. Thus, his mind is working hard trying to figure a quick exit before a catastrophe befalls them. The American couple came to that movie theater hoping to watch an interesting English movie. However, when the movie began, they started to watch the last thing on earth they could expect to see. The movie begins by showing a pornographic film in which two young white girls are having sex. The lesbians are using sex toys while making love with each other. They are fully naked and all their private parts are fully displayed on the big silver screen. Even their black pubic hairs are visible. Before the couple can overcome the first shock, the scene is changed. Now they began to see one young black woman having sex with three men. One man is white, the second is black, and the third guy is Chinese or Japanese. All four are buck naked. The first man is sodomizing her in her ass, the second one inserted his penis in her vagina, and the third one is putting his phallus inside her mouth. Then the scene shifted to one white girl having sex with an animal. It is a big dog that looks like a tiger. Yet, another young Mexican girl is holding a large organ of a donkey and sucking and licking it, and then rubbing it between her big boobs. After that, she tried to insert it forcibly in her pussy. She is screaming from the terrible pain that has been caused by the large organ of the brute. A third black girl behind her is doing the same thing with a penis of a white horse. The audience began to whistle and shout, and some stood on their feet. Some are holding their erect penises beneath their clothes and masturbating openly. They seem to be so excited and overjoyed by what they are watching. By then Malika and Malik began to shake from head to toe and sweat terribly. They have expected anything to happen to them except what they are seeing with their naked eyes in the public Arab theater. They have been taken by surprise. They are frightened and extremely troubled. They are at a loss. Their minds have stopped functioning, and all their limbs are paralyzed. Before they can overcome their helpless situation, the big silver screen begins to show some Arab men in their Saudi and Gulf turbans having sex with small female children. The female children are a mixture of Arab, Pakistani, Indian, Indonesian, Filipino, and African underage girls. Most probably, the African underage female children are Somalis or Sudanese. A couple of them are raping two young boys. Those boys look like either Egyptians or Tunisians. The underage female children's ages are approximately between 12 to 14 years old. Some of them look younger than 12 because they do not have breasts yet. The Arab guys are adults and some of them are old men. Every one of them holds 2 to 3 children and has sex with them. The female children are screaming and sweating due to the terrible pain that has been inflicted on their tiny bodies by the large organs of those human beasts. 2 underage girls are bleeding profusely in their private parts. The Arab men are trying forcibly to insert their large phalluses inside the small private parts of those underage female children. Some of them are trying to sodomize their small female victims. The pornographic scenes are outrageous, and only a person devoid of humanity and ethics can watch them. No rational and moral human being can contemplate such brutalities, or think of doing these evil acts to his fellow human beings, especially helpless underage females. The Indian wife is the first one who managed to jolt herself from her stupor. She forced herself to stand on her trembling legs, managing to do so without falling. Then her right hand found her husband's left hand, and she jerked him out of his shell shock. Without uttering a word, she led the way across the dark hall and hurried towards the exit. Malik stumbled twice and fell one time on someone. He does not feel there is a need to apologize to someone who came to watch such sheer evil. Still, Malik's heart is beating fast and loud, and his entire body is perspiring as if he is emerging out of a sauna. His heart also is filled with indescribable wrath. He knew that, if he happened to have a bomb in hand, he may not have hesitated for a second to detonate it. Even savages and barbarians will not enjoy such outrageous acts. Malaika wished in her heart that all those Arab men and the cinema's staff were shot across their heads, and their filthy bodies burned with unquenchable fire. The three immoral and evil experiences Malik and Malaika have faced in the Arab world have created so much indignation and disappointment in their hearts. The first experience was at the Black Kaaba in Mecca, the so-called sacred and forbidden house of Allah, the second one at the Dawar Dubai Square, and the third one inside the Beirut movie theater. Moreover, their anger has increased beyond the limit due to their unpleasant discovery that in Lebanon there is a church called the Church of the Black Slaves that was created especially for black African people and other Asian immigrants of dark skin. Those bitter experiences have made them despise all the Arabs, Muslims as well as Christians that they came across, and counted them among the savages and barbarians. Whatever they heard about the Arab world are false reports and propaganda. When they were in America, the media showed them a totally different picture of the Arab Muslims from what they had seen with their own eyes and experienced in the Middle East. The Western media shows them as strict societies where women are covered from head to toe, and men with long beards and continuously worshipping their Allah. It shows them as so strict and moral societies, flogging drunkards, stoning adulterers, chopping hands of thieves, beheading murderers, hanging gays and lesbians, and murdering their wives and daughters through honor killings. Therefore, the American couple had never expected to watch in the Arab world what they saw in that cinema hall, which is located at the heart of the capital city of Lebanon. They had never anticipated seeing the number of prostitutes, pimps, and adulterers at the infamous Dawar Dubai Square of the biggest emirate in the Gulf countries. They had never thought to go through the sexual harassment and immorality that permeated the Black Kaaba, the house of Allah, the seat, and the holiest Qibla for all Muslims of the world. Malik and Malaika discovered that the Arabs are the most hypocritical people in the world. They condemn the Western countries as lands of immorality while in their lands they practice all kinds of vices, and even repulsive crimes against innocent female children. The Islamic Mujahideen want to blow themselves up in non-Muslim lands and kill innocent people because for them they are immoral and unclean infidels and brothers of apes and pigs when their countries are full of all kinds of filthiness and immoral practices. Accordingly, the couple wants to forget about their research on the abuse of women in the Muslim world and return to their land. The land of freedom and human dignity, the land of human rights, women's rights, children's rights, and even animals' rights, the landing shore of the European Puritans and Pilgrims, the secured homeland for the refugees and persecuted immigrants of the Third World, the land of freedom of worship to every religion of the world, the land of Christ and Christians, the protective place for Jews and Hindus and Muslims. When Christians were persecuted by the Church of England and the Church of Rome, they fled for safety in that land, and when the Jews were killed in Europe by Adolf Hitler and his brutal Nazi Germans, they found a haven there too. When the Russians fled from Joseph Stalin, the Chinese from Mao Zedong, the Arabs from Saddam Hussein, and the Africans from Idi Amin, they sought refuge in that welcoming land. It is the land of everyone and for all who seek protection and yearn for better opportunities in life. The Ten Commandments are the umbilical cord of its constitution, and its laws are based on the divine ideals of Christ's Sermon on the Mount. It is the greatest country in the world. It is the superpower and the rule of the entire free world. It is the zenith of Western civilization and the pride of all civilized nations. It is the first revolution in the world, the first great constitution, the first country to separate religion from the state and grant freedom of worship to all religions, and the first country to have a civil war against slavery. It is the land of Abraham Lincoln and Martin Luther King. It is home to the Statue of Liberty. In short, their land is proudly called the United States of America. God bless America. Land of the free people, home of the brave.